Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. That time of week again, we're going to be jumping into NFL Power Rankings. We're heading into week 8, Thursday night, Minnesota LA Rams going to kick off tomorrow. We're going to go through all the games that just happened in week 7, do a little preview of who's playing who in week 8, and yeah, just a little bit of a shuffle all over the board. We only had 2 teams on the bye this week. It was the Rams, not the Rams, it was the Bears and the Dallas Cowboys. And otherwise, this week coming up, no teams on a bye, so we have another full slate. I think it'll be the last full slate. Maybe Thanksgiving, I think they do a full slate, but for the rest of the season. So fun stuff jumping into it. Before I do, subscribe if you are not doing that yet. Otherwise, guys, number 32, not a lot of argument. They just got blown out again, giving up 40 points to the Washington Commanders. I think that's every game this season that they've given up 30 plus, and other than the one game, the first game that Andy Dalton threw for this team, they just continue to lose. It's going to be interesting. Are they going to give Bryce Young another chance now that they're pretty much completely out and completely getting blown out? Maybe. Don't know. But it's kind of been disastrous for the Carolina Panthers. Not too much else to say. They are heading off to Denver in this upcoming week. Next up, New England made the travel to London this week. These guys are staying in their same spot as last week. They lose to the Jacksonville Jaguars. If you're a fan of this channel and you watched last week, both those teams in the bottom row, and I think they're both still in the bottom row. Not really much to add. New England's second worst team in the league, and arguably the one team they're going to be competitive against is going to be that Carolina Panthers team. If it wasn't for that first win upset of the season against the Cincinnati Bengals, they would have been in a much tougher spot. They're going to be playing their division rival, the Jets. Jets have had a really awful start, so it's going to be an interesting match whether or not New England can kind of take advantage of a struggling Jets team, but it's also, on the other hand, the Jets are going to get a chance to really bounce back. Number 30, sticking in the same spot as last week, we do have the Cleveland Browns, and things got even uglier for them this week. They lose 21-14 against the Bengals, and we see Deshaun Watson go down with an Achilles injury, and he's going to be out for the rest of the season. Whether or not that really impacts the team negatively, quarterback, he has not been good whatsoever. We're going to see Jameis Winston go in. So Flamin' Winston in the backfield possibly could get this offense going, but they're going to have a tough way of going. They're starting that off with Baltimore. Number 29, we do have the Las Vegas Raiders. They do lose to the Rams 20-15, and it's just been pretty much a subpar season for the Raiders. There was a little bit of excitement for them until the wheels came off. Losing to Carolina really hurt. They beat Baltimore early in the season. You were pretty excited. Maybe this team had something, but just not there. And maybe the coaching situation that we saw going to this season and debating the players getting behind the coach and all that, not really working out for them. I wouldn't be surprised if we're going to see a new coach coming into the Raiders next year. It's over for them. This division's too tough. The Chiefs are walking away with it. Denver's looking much better than before. Chargers are always a little bit better than the Raiders, at least right now. And then the Raiders, they're going to be playing Kansas City this week, so things are not going to be looking up too soon. Number 28, just an ugly game for the Dolphins. They lose this week 17-10 to the Indianapolis Colts. And guys, it's 16-10, but it doesn't matter. That was a game that they really should have won. Huntley going down with an injury halfway through. They're up 10-0 at one point in this game. They have a chance to close it out, and they fumble in the red zone against Indy, and Indy just ends up kicking a couple of field goals to walk away with a 16-10 win. Dolphins have Tua coming back. I'm not ready to say that's going to make a big difference, but since he's gone down, the offense has been flat, super flat. But him coming back, he's just one hit away from being out for the rest of the year. So I am not ready to move the Dolphins up. I don't know if Tua is going to make that big of a difference. And right now, a lot of concerns for the Dolphins. Number 27, Jacksonville Jaguars, sticking in that same spot. Some people pointed out that technically the Dolphins did beat them in week 1, and maybe the Jags should be worse. But I think based on the current situation of the Dolphins and certainty of quarterback, it's definitely a little bit different now than it would have been in week 1. Jaguars did have a nice solid win against New England. They lose to the Jets, or was it Minnesota? They lost to someone in the first week of London. It was the Bears. And now they're 1-1 on their London trip. So not too bad. Of course, it's not been a great season for them whatsoever. It's been pretty disastrous. They now come home. They're going to be going to Green Bay, playing the Packers, a team that has been playing top 10 in the league the past few weeks. So they're going to be tested right now. And if they're going to work their way out of the bottom row, it's going to start with this week against the Packers. Number 26, I got the New York Giants, who offensively did not look good, and we started to think maybe with neighbors in there that their offense was going to get a little thing going, but they only put up 3 points against the Eagles, and that really set the stage for me that they're clearly the worst team in the NFC East, and arguably on their way to the bottom row if they don't get this offensive thing sorted out. Defensively, they've looked fairly good on most nights, but giving up 28 to the Eagles, they kept it really close for the first half, and then it kind of started to get away from them after that. Giants do have the excitement of playing Monday night against the Steelers. Matchup that could go either way. It's going to be an interesting one. 2 popular teams on Monday night, always good. Number 25, a team that actually moves up on a loss, and that's mainly because the Giants just look that much worse. But Tennessee did not really compete well. They had a lead at one point against the Buffalo Bills, but it ends up being 34-10, not really a close game whatsoever. Tennessee, not a lot to get excited about. I think we saw on the Discord group people talking about DeAndre Hopkins being traded out now to KC. So they're pretty much throwing in the towel, and rightfully so. I think Houston's walking away with this division. Indy seems to have a little bit of an edge on them. Jaguars is a team they probably will compete with, and they still have the matchups against. But coming in now with 1 win on the season and going to play Detroit this week, it's very, very dire for the Titans. Number 24. Falling quickly from their glory of the early parts of the season. New Orleans Saints at number 24. Just an ugly Thursday night game for them. They end up losing 33-10. But that game was never really close. And Denver putting up that many points on this team that looked all right early on. Offensively with Rattler in there and no more Derek Carr, it's been disaster for them. So that's just pretty much proven that they're falling out of this race. They're going to be competing with Carolina at this point for who's actually going to be worse. They only have 1 more win than Carolina, and that came in the first week of the season. They're going to have another matchup. Carolina could even the score if they match up again, but between Tampa Bay and Atlanta, there seem to be quite a bit away, especially the way how things have been going. Number 23, talked about them already against the Dolphins. 16-10 win was not a convincing win. Well, the Titans went up with a loss. The Colts actually went down this board with their win, and that's because it was not a convincing win, in my opinion. Probably against any other team on any given that day is not going to be good enough to win. So relatively, when you're facing them up against other teams that I have going ahead of them, I just think the Colts aren't in that competitive mode right now. Of course, they got a pretty good record. They're right there in the thick of things, and they're now going to play their second game against Houston already this season. They're going to be done. So they got to pick up a W here. I know they lost the first one against Houston, but it was like 15-13. It was a super close game. So if they can have that kind of outing and pull off a win against Houston, they're going to probably end up going up this board, because whether or not they're not winning confidently and in style, they're picking up wins, and they're going to be in that playoff race. And right now, the middle of this board, super thick, and you can make some moves with a little bit of a run here. Number 22. Nice little win over the Raiders this week, 20-15. We're going to see them play Thursday. I'm excited to see them play in a pretty meaningful game tomorrow, and a chance for them to really show, hey, we're actually not out of this playoff race quite yet, but it's going to be against the Minnesota Vikings. It's going to be a tough matchup, a team that has been rolling. I don't really expect them to win. Right now, the Rams they're sticking around, and if they can stick around just long enough while everyone else gets healthy on their offense, it might be impactful. Because right now, no one has really stepped up in this division to run away with it. And right now, the Rams are very much in there. Number 21, we have the Chargers, who, more games than not, they're very competitive on this season so far, especially when we saw them play against the Chiefs a couple weeks ago. But they fall short here, 17-15 against Arizona. Didn't really get much deep offense going, throwing up a ton of field goals on this Monday night game. And they had a lead, and Arizona got that last-minute field goal again to throw off that one. So it wasn't really one where Arizona's been kind of inconsistent, but at the same time, the Chargers are somewhat inconsistent. The offense isn't what we've seen in the past from them, but the defense seems to keep them very much in games at all times. So Chargers very much sticking around. So we're kind of starting to talk about teams that are arguably in that playoff race. And I think realistically, what do we have? 7 teams on each side making it to the playoffs. Top 3 lines are going to be playoff teams, so these guys aren't quite out of it yet. Whereas this bottom row, you're far, far out of it. 20 at the Chicago Bears, and they had a bye week. Not much going to be saying that. They're staying in the same spot. I'm excited to see them coming up. They're playing Washington this week. We would have seen Caleb Williams against Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels, of course, left the game with a rib injury. He's missing practice. It's questionable whether he plays. I'm on the fence thinking he probably won't play, but everyone would have loved to see this matchup had he playing. But that's one we're looking forward to this week. Number 19. The New York Jets just, I don't even know what to say about the Jets other than they just keep disappointing. 37-15 loss to the Pittsburgh Steelers, giving up 37 to Pittsburgh, giving up a lot of turnovers. Just Garrett Wilson, the one that hits him in the chest and turns into an interception. That just seems to be what's been happening for the Jets, and specifically him as a player for a few years now. Devontae Adams doesn't make an impact in his first game, but of course you want to see them get some gains under their belt. The one holy light, I guess, for the Jets is they do play the Patriots this week. They have to win. It's like no question asked. That's a must-win situation for this team that's starting to fall behind the 8 ball. Dolphins, while I have them in the bottom row, if Tua comes back and they offensively start to look good again, I think they still have 2 games against the Dolphins, so those Dolphins can hop them in this division, can start to be on its head for the Jets if they're not careful. Must-win situation for the Jets. This team is probably starting to panic. If there's a loss here, prepare for the worst. Number 18, Arizona Cardinals beating the Chargers. A nice, grindy win on that Monday night. And Cardinals is one of the teams this season that I just can't figure out. Some days they look great. Their offense is flying. They're putting up 30. Other times they're grinding out a win like we just saw this past Monday. Other times they're losing in situations where you wouldn't expect them to lose. It's just been a weird season, but they're right there in the thick of it, and that's in a division that is up for grabs. Number 17, bounce back after I dropped them. I wasn't happy with the loss that they had with the Chargers, but I think they bounced back in a meaningful way with that Thursday night win that we all witnessed for Denver Broncos, guys. New Orleans, down and out. Denver pounced, and in prime time, those young guys really stepping up. It was nice to see Bo Nix looking all right and leading this offense. Right now, second best team in the AFC West. Clearly, and we've got 3 teams in the AFC West, and we all know where number 1 is going to be. So they're right there, kicking their way up the board. Number 16, coming off a bye, Dallas. It's going to have their hands full with San Fran this week, and they have to perform because I have them slowly dropping down the board. And usually that's not the case on bye weeks. You don't really move. But it's not been a great season for Dallas, and some of the other teams are starting to make me believe that they are better than Dallas. So Dallas's first step to get back in the right books and start to be back in that playoff conversation and not be surpassed by Washington is to win against San Fran. Number 15, Cincinnati Bengals. This is going to be an interesting storyline that I think we're going to be watching all season long here. The Bengals starting off one of the worst starts in recent memory for the Bengals. We all know they're an 0-2 team out of the gate almost all seasons and somehow managed to figure it out. Where they 1-4 in the first 5. I think they're going to start turning things around. 21-14 win over the Browns. Still got a long way to go, but they're definitely, in my opinion, going to be fighting for a playoff spot, and I would not be surprised if they sneak in it. This week, I want to see them play strong offensively against this Eagles team. This Eagles team has shown some defense that has shut down teams, and Bengals have the offense that hasn't quite shown its true strength at times this year. And the defense used to be the weakness early in the season, the losses, but now it's starting to be their strength. So I want to see the Bengals put out a full team effort this week, and I think they can even move up to this next 3 rows. Next up, Seattle Seahawks. A little bit of a bounce back. I'm not 100% sold, but I think it was a great performance, 34-14, an all-around offensive performance against Atlanta Falcons. And Seattle, DK Metcalf looked great, and he always seems to be pulling the catches. I did see some sort of injury going on with him. I didn't follow up on it to see what was going on. They're going to be hosting Buffalo Bills. That's going to be a true test. So they've been starting to bounce back. They went 3-0 to start, lost 3 in a row. Then we pick up a win here. What's going to happen against a top-tier team like Buffalo? Are they going to be able to go pound for pound with the Bills? I think they can. but they got to show it. They got to really show it. Number 13. We got Tampa Bay Bucks. I think they're kind of holding on to this position with the skin of their teeth now after what we just watched. 41-31 against the Baltimore Ravens. The score doesn't really justify how close this game actually was. It was pretty much a blowout. Godwin goes down with that gruesome injury. We see Evans leave the game with an injury, and Baker Mayfield throwing up turnovers. There's a lot of concern around this offense now going into next week. They are matching up against Atlanta. This is the second game against Atlanta. They lost the first one. And this probably, if they fall this one, it would pretty much mean that the division is probably going to start going Atlanta's way at that point. And they have a pretty hurting offense right now. So that's probably what's created them to fall down, and probably would see them in the next row next week if they don't pull off a W. Number 12. Talked about already, Jaden Daniels and co. put up 40 against Carolina, and he went out with some rib injuries. We see them playing Chicago this week. That's one game I have circled on the calendar. I hope he plays. But right now, Washington has looked solid offensively. But defensively, they've also looked solid. Arguably, top 10 team right now. My concern and what's held me from pushing them back is that injury. How is he going to perform? Is he going to be still a runner? I know it's just ribs, but throwing with your ribs and taking another hit, he's one hit away. It's potential that it could be a lot longer, so I'm going to be kind of holding off there. Number 11, we saw Russell Wilson make his debut back for the, not back, but for the Steelers in the regular season, really, and taking over for Justin Fields. They put up 37. Is that points don't necessarily tell the story of how the game went for Wilson, but maybe this is the turning point of the Steelers being able to put up points. Will they follow it up against the New York Giants? I think their defense is really in a position to really sack Daniel Jones time and time again here. We saw the Eagles really sack him. So with TJ Watt and that defensive line for the Steelers, I think we're going to see kind of a repeat situation. Number 10. Something does not seem right in San Francisco, but I'm not ready to really give up and drop them way down. Their standing-wise, not great. We're dealing with a ton of injuries that have really set them back, and Purdy he's looked vulnerable at times, definitely when it comes to turnovers, definitely with moving the ball. There's definitely some issues there, and it doesn't get much easier. They're immediately going to be tested with a well-rested Dallas team this week, and arguably if they fall in this situation again, we're going to probably see them start to flirt with Seattle into this next row down. Number 9. Probably one of the biggest fallers in the top 10. We have the Atlanta Falcons. And it was a pretty big loss to the Seahawks. And sure, I have them still ahead of the Seahawks. And a lot of that is goodwill in the division. They have built themselves a little bit of a cushion. I do kind of expect them to continue to build that cushion over the Buccaneers this week. But there is some concerns that with that 14-point outing against the Seahawks team, not great. And at times we've seen them give up massive amounts of points like we just did to Seattle. So there are some concerns with Kirk Cousins. The offense need to do better. They need to be more consistent right now. That is my biggest concern. We're at home against Seattle. Something to be concerned about. Number 8. The Philadelphia Eagles moving up a few spots and looking good in the process. I think having A.J. Brown back just seems like it's rejuvenated this team. And realistically, they have not really lost any games along the way. The only one that really stands out is that late game loss to Atlanta, and they probably should have walked away with that one. So their record should be even better. I think at this point, this division is kind of theirs, but we haven't seen them match up yet against Washington. Hopefully when that happens, Jaden Daniels is back in there and we can see a very exciting game. But this defense is playing at an elite level, keeping the Giants to 3 points. Coming up this week, they have Cincinnati. So a team that is on the up and up on a winning streak from themselves. So we have 2 teams that are trending up on this board. That always makes for an exciting game. That's one of my games of the week. Number 7, I have the Buffalo Bills. Their offense and Josh Allen continue to kind of roll. 34-10 against Tennessee. They do seem to manage to do quite well against these bottom row teams. We saw them beat up on Jacksonville. We've seen them beat up on Tennessee even against the Dolphins when Tua went down. They were doing pretty well in that situation. However, we haven't seen them do super well. Teams ahead of them, Houston, we saw them struggle with a little bit there. We did see other games along the way, and they have a tough schedule coming out. I think Kansas City in a couple of weeks will be one to watch how they start doing. I want to see them play as well as they have been offensively and defensively. when they start playing some of these higher up opponents. Number 6, we have those Houston Texans who barely edged them out the week before, and Houston was in another pretty epic game this week against the Packers, and I think Packers are next, so I'm just going to throw them up at the same time. That game was 24-22, back and forth, really could have ended up anyway. Either team could have taken this one, but Packers ended up edging them out. Houston has Indy this week. I talked about how that's the second game already. It's going to be pretty important if they do win it. I think this division is pretty much locked up for Houston at that point. They'd have to break a lot of players in order to blow that one. Green Bay, on the other hand, they have Jacksonville. They're going to keep that rolling as well. The funny thing is we got two different situations here. Houston's 6, and they're pretty far up in their division. And then we got Green Bay at number 5, and they're 3rd in their division because number 4 in that same division is that Minnesota Vikings team who fell a little bit short against the Lions. There was a chance to win both the game against the Packers, and now the Lions has been back and forth, barn-burning, offensive-driven games that have come down to the wire. Minnesota, it's been fun watching this team, and they're going to keep rolling with Thursday night. They're going to get a little bit of a highlight. Are they going to continue to perform as well as they have under pressure, under the lights, under the eyes of the nation? That's going to be fun to watch. But Minnesota, their first loss, and I kind of predicted it. If you watched last week, I dropped them down from number 2 because I just like the Lions. The Lions just felt stronger going into last week. Number 3, we had the Baltimore Ravens 41-31 over the Buccaneers, and guys, their offense is just so amazing to watch. Watching Derrick Henry steamroll his way, and Lamar doing MVP-like things. Just overall, you could name so many stats along the way. They're just setting records as a team. It's been super exciting to watch. And if it wasn't for these two teams ahead of them, they really arguably could be a number 1 team, but they've lost to the number 1, who we know who it's gonna be. And number 2's just looked stronger for longer. Baltimore Ravens, I think, have had times where they look scary, whether closing games out. So that's the concern. But 2, Detroit Lions, 31-29 over the Minnesota Vikings. We talked about that already. They're going to play Tennessee this week, so should keep it rolling. Adrian Hutchinson going down and missing this week. Hurts, of course, this team, but offensively, can they be stopped? They're almost as lethal as the number 1 team who continues to be undefeated. If you go back to last season, it's got to be 12 in a row or something. So the Kansas City Chiefs at number 1, going to be going to Las Vegas to pretty much continue to be undefeated. I think that's pretty much expected. Bring in DeAndre Hopkins. That's going to be fun to watch if you're a Chiefs fan. Guys, there you have it. 1 through 32, guys, and hopefully you liked it. I'm kind of ripping through it this week. Things are just flying on the channel, and hope you guys liked it. World Series kicking off on Friday. Maybe if I can, I'm going to try and get a little preview fun video for that. Otherwise, guys, thanks for watching. We'll see you for that next video.